All right, it's time to get back on track. And hi everyone. I hope you have enjoyed the 3 papers presented this morning. Welcome to the plenary session, which is going to be given by Mr. Frantisek Imrecze. I'm Christos Kotsogiannis. I'm the director of TARC. And it gives me a great pleasure to introduce Mr. Frantisek Imrecze. I'm going to say a few things about him before I pass on the floor to him. Frantisek is currently the executive secretary of the Inter-European Organization of Tax Administrations, having been the president of the organization during 2017-2018. He has considerable experience in informatics and telecommunication, having worked in these sectors for many years. Experience was who duly applied to the Slovak financial administration when he took over its presidency in 2012 and held until 2018. During his tenure at the Slovak financial administration, Frantisek launched, in cooperation with the police force and the General Prosecutor's Office, the project Tax Cobra. The main emphasis of that project was to use analytical tools in the fight against tax fraud in the areas of VAT and excise duties. That resulted in closing the tax gap quite considerably, from 41% in 2012 to 26% in 2018, a considerable decrease in the VAT gap, within a few years. Frantisek has a wealth of experience, as I said, in tax administration policy, and I'm really delighted and honored that he has accepted our invitation to share some of it, and in particular regarding how tax administration have responded to the crisis. In terms of risk management, human resources reforms, and things like that. So thank you very much, Frantisek, for joining us. It's been a pleasure to have you. The floor is yours. You have about 60 minutes, so 35-40 minutes here for your talk, and then I would like to open the floor for discussion. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you a lot, Christos, for inviting me to the conference. It's my honor and pleasure to be here with you and to have an opportunity to, as you already mentioned, to elaborate on some of the reforms initiatives that tax administration had to undertake to counter the impacts of the crisis, especially in 2 elements or 2 areas: digitalization and team motivation, team engagement, and team spirit. I actually hope that my presentation today will nicely complement the plenary session you had yesterday with James Alm on tax policy measures to counter the COVID pandemic and considerations how to improve tax compliance in relation to that. So as you said, I would, rather than on policy, focus on reforms and initiatives of tax administrations, give you some examples from IOTA and also from IOTA members. Just a second, okay. Before I go to the topic, I believe it is good that I introduce you IOTA a bit. I'm sure many of you know IOTA. Some of you might not know IOTA, of course. So as Christos already said, we are an intra-European organization of tax administrations. We have 44 member tax administration in Euro-Asian region. These tax administrations administer, collect more than 5 trillion euro of total net tax revenue and employ around 680,000 tax officials. We are one of the regional tax organizations in the world, quite sizable, taking in consideration the numbers I'm just presenting to you. Sorry, I have some problems moving the slides. I do not know why. Yeah. What do? We provide best practice to our members, and from our members, obviously, also from our partner organizations and other regional tax organizations. How do we share best practice? First of all, we try to be as practical as possible in sharing that best practice. So we do it through our technical events. We have many formats of technical events, which I will not bother you with, through forums, which are our large technical events, to many webinars and other forms of technical events. We do projects. We have a system of technical inquiries, which is a platform to which our members can publish their technical inquiry to a certain member or a group of members, and then it's obviously responded duly. IOTA is a partner of IZORA. You may know that IZORA is an international survey of revenue administrations. Actually, after the survey, it creates a very nice benchmarking platform in which more than 150 global tax administrations globally take part. We just started with technical assistance pilot project, and this is a line of our activities we plan to develop in a very short future. Okay, sorry for this. I do not know what causes this problem with moving slides. We are not alone in what we do. Our partners are global and multilateral institutions, the OECD, IMF, World Bank, and as I already said, the regional tax organizations who are gathered under the umbrella of network of tax organization, which is actually a global platform which is developing rapidly in sharing best practice among the regional tax organizations. So NTO has 9 members. I will not name them all, but it covers the globe. So it's SIAD from America, ZATA from Africa, TARC, the Arabic countries, etc., which is obviously very good, because then we avoid some duplicities in what we do. Going to the topic, as we all know, pandemic had significant impact on tax administrations. Let me start obviously with impact on economies. In many countries, important segments of economy were severely hit due to lockdowns, partial lockdowns, and other measures that prevented these industries to run their business as usually, and obviously caused severe losses, closures, restructurings, etc. That has obviously significantly influenced tax administrations, not just in efficiency of tax revenue collection and tax compliance, but also in other forms. Tax administration had to engage in functions they've been not responsible for before, like support and relief payments in many European tax administrations was a new activity they needed to master and manage very fast. So the impact was not on the tax administration in the broad meaning of tax administration, but also on changing functions. Now, the pandemic, of course, caused in many elements that internal and external processes had to be reshaped, remodeled, changed. The forced remote working was obviously one of the key impacts which determined the change of internal processes and also taxpayer processes in many elements. Now, what it brought basically is that digitalization of services and processes, and obviously we speak about external services to taxpayers, we speak about internal services to employees, communication processes, engagement processes, became a must, not an option, because otherwise tax administration would have not been able to deliver the functions they are supposed to deliver. Let me cover some of the elements of something which I dare to call digital immunity to crisis. There is one significant output of this slide, and that's in the middle, saying the more digital the tax administration is. And let me add, the more digital the tax administration is in peaceful time, less affected the tax administration is in the times of crisis. And what does it mean to be more digital? So what elements this digitalization has to reach that if the time of crisis come, and it came apparently, that the tax administration became less affected. First of all, it's digital maturity, which defines actually the level of digitalization and the quality of digitalization of processes and interactions which the tax administration reached to overcome the crisis. Now, this digital maturity at the same time defines the digital success of tax administration. There are tax administrations who've been very little affected on their operations because of the COVID-19 pandemic, because they were intensively or heavily, in a positive meaning of the word, digitalized before the crisis. I will give you some examples on this. Focus on customers. Obviously, digitalization of taxpayer services is a topic which we have for many, many years. Again, some tax administration were faster and more efficient before the crisis. It paid off during the crisis. They did not need to change basically anything or very little to keep tax collection efficient, tax collection and tax compliance on desired level and efficient. Compared to some other tax administration who needed to speed up the digitalization of taxpayer services, because there obviously was, and there is no other choice during the crisis. Now, it has a direct impact on compliance. So again, the more advanced you are in delivering digital e-services, and the easier it is for the tax administration to reach high level of tax revenue collection and tax compliance. This is the external part of digitalization, and let me touch upon an internal digitalization. As I said, for many tax administration, the crisis delivered forced remote working for large number, actually almost for all employees. So for large number of big teams, which was not the case before. So it mandated process digitalization and digitalization of interactions with the teams. Now, it was not so difficult, and here let me talk about IOTA, and I will always elaborate on that a bit more. It's not so difficult actually to find the right, digital streaming tools like we are using today, and to master them and to learn to have digital meetings and digital interactions more efficient than we had them before. I will give you some example on that from IOTA. what is not so easy is to digitalize team engagement and digitalize team spirit and digitalize social inclusiveness, because that's obviously something which influences at the end tax compliance levels and tax revenue collection levels, so your core business, so to say, in a very large extent. Okay. I said I will give you an example from IOTA member tax administration on digital success or successful digitalization, not during the COVID-19 pandemic, but before, and the positive impacts it had on or positive results it delivered during the COVID-19 pandemic. I decided to choose the Finnish tax administration, Veroskat, as an example of an advanced IOTA member tax administration for you, to tell you how the Finnish tax administration was prepared before the crisis in the level of digitalization. First of all, in the Finnish tax administration, remote working was a norm for several years already. So it's a cultural element, of course, mostly, that the teams in Finnish tax administration were used to remote working, and it was not a new element in their life during the crisis. 73%, it's a very high percentage, had worked remotely before COVID-19 crisis, and 89% worked remotely during the COVID-19 crisis. Now, the interesting point here is not the 89% that worked remotely during the crisis, because at the end, that was the case in many other tax administrations. The interesting is a small difference between 73 and 89 percentages, because in many other tax administrations of IOTA, that difference was significantly bigger. And I do not want to tell you the numbers because I do not have them, but this is an example of a tax administration which has used remote working as a norm before, and therefore the transformation from 73% to 89% increase of remote working during the crisis was actually a very natural thing and had caused no problem to Veroskat, to the Finnish tax administration. When it comes to e-services for taxpayers, e-services again are a norm in the Finnish tax administration for over 20 years. So it has not been a major shift, and it was not a major speed up in offering a larger extent of e-services during the crisis than before the crisis. Let me give you also here some examples. So it's 73 of individuals who do not need to make any changes in their pre-completed tax returns in Finland, and 85 of those who use e-services. In other words, that 85% of those taxpayers who use e-services are not, actually do not need to change anything in their tax declaration, which is obviously a very high percentage in a very high compliance rate when it comes to tax morale and obviously the way how these digital services are provided is helping tax compliance and tax morale to a large extent. It's also important to mention COTS. COTS are commercial off-the-shelf solutions for tax administrations. I obviously speak about IT solutions. It's called commercial off the shelf. In other words, it is customized, pre-customized for tax administration's functions, which means that the tax administration, if goes for costs when it comes to their IT applications environment, reaches that they are up and running easier and faster with their IT solutions than if it's customized during the implementation projects for the need of tax administration. And it is just a good example that the Finnish tax administration relied on COTS to make the IT from application point of view environment working better and faster than if they would have done it through customized solution. IOTA examples. Let me tell you how we were before the crisis. I mean, IOTA now. Before the crisis, IOTA conducted most of the technical and administrative events physically. So we had a limited percentage of digital events, mainly webinars only when it comes to formats of our events. Work in the office was a key element of our culture. So we had very limited work flexibility between office work and home office work. I am just naming it here. We had 1 day per week home office, and that was also a subject of approval by a manager. The digital infrastructure of IOTA was not sufficient to deliver all the events digitally or to go through the digital transformation we have gone through actually very fast and fortunately pretty successfully in 2020. So in a nutshell, IOTA was not a very flexible and not a very digital organization before the crisis. And in a contrary to a Finnish tax administration, we needed to react to the crisis while the Finnish tax administration was prepared for the crisis because they've done all we as IOTA needed to do during the crisis, before the crisis. I already touched upon team engagement, team motivation as a very important element for at the end reaching the desired level of tax collection and desired level of tax compliance. And I already mentioned that it is not very easy to digitalize team engagement. It's easy when it comes to tools, but it's not easy when it comes to engagement as the important element of the overall success. So let me start again from the middle of the slide. In the digital times, trust within teams, among teams, trust between teams and between team members and superiors is a critical element for going through the crisis successfully. Now, we all know that trust does not come automatically. It does not appear from the sudden. It needs to be built, and it needs to be maintained, and it needs to be developed. And I would like to touch upon some of the elements which are helping all of us to develop trust. So this slide obviously is not about IOTA. This is about tax administrations, IOTA, and honestly, I believe many other organizations than tax administrations only. So let me start with inclusiveness as the first element. It is very important to have, especially during times of forced remote working, that everybody feels to be valid, or so to be an important part of the organization. So it's the collective discussion of topics that matter to all. It's about trust that anyone can bring up the issue or a problem to anybody. So the feeling that we all are a part of the same and of one team within the whole organization is a very, very important element. Let me continue on the softer parts of building trust rather than technicalities. We found out also in IOTA, going through the digital transformation of IOTA, which of course will continue, that empathy from managers to team members, between team members in all directions during forced remote working and then during 100% digital modus operandi is a very, very important element. It's a very important element because I'm sure you know it yourself. I mean, a home office, which is now a norm, or distant working, which is now a norm for basically 10 months, if I count it correctly, everywhere and for everybody, does bring many new challenges, right? In many countries, there was a partial lockdown or lockdown of schools in all levels, basically. So, you know, families who need to work distantly, or people who need to work distantly, have their kids at home. You know, it's many disturbing interactions you do not have when you are in the office. So to find the home office regime, which is not for 1 week or 2 weeks, but which is a norm with all the different type of interventions you have, when you are at home, is not easy. And it needs to be really, you need to find your own regime, because at least my own experience from IOTA, if you do not find a regime, I mean, you start to be less and less efficient. So empathy from managers to team members and helping them to find that home office regime is a very important element of overall success. The next element is flexibility, which obviously is very much connected to what I said before. So we need, you know, we as managers and leaders of organizations need to assure that team members have sufficient flexibility to accommodate their personal needs during home office times. I think I explained it before, and then you experienced it yourself. I mean, so the need of flexibility and the feeling of anybody in the organization that the flexibility was given is a very important element for success. Let me go to technicalities. It was also an interesting evolution in IOTA. And let me start with inner team communications. You know, I go back to March when we started our home office regime, or our distant working modus operandi. And obviously, we started to utilize video streaming applications a lot. And now it happened that any little issue which was needed to be discussed, you know, was supposed to be discussed in a form of a video call. Very, very inefficient. You know, another element was that, for example, I personally was receiving flood of emails. You know, much more emails than during normal office times, because you do not have the interactions within the office. So everybody writes an email. You know, so we really needed to define the priority of communication tools to keep communications efficient and effective, so to say. So we said, look, if you have a little problem, issue, whatever you would like to discuss, there are texting applications. Please use them before you send an invitation for a video call. And there are phones, you can make a call via iPhone. So please call me if you need something, right? And then, I mean, if I do not react, I'd say, I mean, it's an example. If anybody does not react to a text message or call, then please write an email. And if it's something which we really need to discuss within a team, and it's more strategic or more important, then let's have a video call. So fortunately, finally, we have decreased the number of video calls significantly since March until today. And I will come back to it. It's also important to say already now that the time we spent on video call has reduced significantly from March until today. So this is something which I call on this slide inner team communication. And then it's also important to find the rhythm of meetings. So, we had weekly team meetings before the crisis. We kept them digitally during the crisis on a regular basis, regardless whether it's something important happening in the organization or not, or whether we have a busy week or less busy week. It keeps up the team spirit and team motivation and team engagement. So the rhythm of communication is very, very important also. And all what we are discussing now, or what I'm trying to deliver to you, are elements which help build trust, which is an ultimate element of condition of success during the times of remote working. Let me continue with the Finnish tax administration, and let me tell you how the Finnish tax administration managed team motivation and team spirit actually already before the crisis. First of all, they implemented before the crisis a very agile management. So more distributed, less hierarchies than before, making the teams to be closer together, making people to be closer together. So making the operation more agile and delivering outputs of all interactions faster. A very important element is self-directedness. And if you know what to do, do it. Do not wait for instructions. And self-directedness was an important principle of the HR transformation Verhofstadt made already before the crisis. And very important element from cultural point of view, because at the end it goes back to the culture in the organization which you have or you are trying to develop, that they change the name from managers to coaches. So and I think it's a very important difference, right? So if you are a member of the team, you have a different feeling if you feel you speak to your coach than if you speak to your manager. So I personally liked it very much, and I think it's a very, very nice, it's a nice and important element of building a cultural change towards a more agile and more self-directed organization. When it comes to culture, I will spend some time on that also a bit later. It's a very important element of overall success. So cultural change does not come similarly to trust from one day to another. So cultural change is a marathon, but we need to do this marathon in sprints, right? So do individual phases, parts of that cultural change fast, and do the marathon in sprints, I think is a very good and understandable example for that. Other elements which are a core part of the culture in the Finnish tax administrations are be active, available, and provide support, provide places to collaborate. Places, obviously, formats for collaboration, and I mentioned them. Be there for your teams via text messages, calls, video calls, mails. Just be close and be open, and find the rhythm. In all these collaboration tools. Remove barriers. So I already spoke about the more horizontal organization rather than a more hierarchical organization. And last one, a very important element, which has a lot to do with empathy, which we discussed before. Don't ignore change fatigue. And that's obviously a combination of change fatigue from our work, from our professional life, and a combination of change fatigue from our personal lives, because obviously the COVID-19 pandemic impacted both heavily, and it can be a lot of time. So you as a manager, team leader, a member of the team, need to take this in consideration, that your colleagues might feel that, and obviously there are different measures in different countries, but there are measures in all the countries, right? So I'm, for example, now giving this presentation, fortunately, from our office in Budapest. And now Budapest has a curfew in the evening, so it really feels apocalyptic after 8 in this city. IOTA, when it comes to team engagement and team motivation, we had an engaged team before the pandemic, fortunately, and I think everybody in the IOTA Secretariat team feels that. We had a collaborative culture, no issue with that, and honesty and transparency is our core, one of our core values, which we are developing. Hopefully, we had enough level of empathy to our team members, and we had a lot of social interactions. As you can see from the screen, we try to have digital social interactions, but it's not easy, of course, all right, to have a digital Christmas party within a team. Much worse than real one, physical. But I think it's important also to digitalize social interaction in an extent in which it is possible. So we had all the elements which are actually determinators of success. And as I used this term before, we need to digitalize them. And we need to digitalize team engagement and to find the rhythm and to find guidelines for communication tools. And we did it, fortunately, successfully. But obviously, everybody in the team, as we all miss, especially the social interaction part, a lot. When it comes to the future, post-pandemic vision, and this is obviously not IOTA, this is tax administrations of IOTA, I believe, tax administrations in general. We believe, and then let me talk about IOTA, which obviously I'm closest to. I believe we will end up in a hybrid operation model, and it's hybrid operation model not just in delivering our events and delivering the technical activities work program, but it's also hybrid operation model when it comes to the modus operandi of how we are going to manage the organization. Much more flexibility in working regime, and I honestly believe this will be the norm in tax administrations too. Actually, it would be a shame not to learn from efficiencies during the pandemic, because as we know, I mean, this pandemic has brought severe negative impacts. On the other hand, it taught us to be more efficient in how we operate. And I think we should learn from that efficiency and keep it up for the future. When it comes to tax administration, it will be a boost of e-services. So, not all the tax administrations in the IOTA region are so digitalized as the Finnish tax administration. They sped up the digitalization of services significantly shortly before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and I think they will continue to do that because, as we said, the digital immunity need to be built in peaceful times and deliver results during the crisis. Culture of change, mindset, nobody expected this crisis. Hopefully we will be soon behind it in the world. We cannot foresee that there will be no other crisis or any other changes. We anyway, regardless of crisis, live in a very fast changing environment. So a mindset and a culture of change and adoption to change is a very important element of success in tax administrations. So in a nutshell, IOTA tax administrations and IOTA will be much more digital than before, much more flexible than before, and we'll need to develop a culture which will welcome change and will be able cope with change faster. When it comes to conclusions of basically both key elements, digitalization and team engagement, let me just make a summary of what I said. We spoke about digital immunity to crisis a lot. So the level of team process digitalization defines the level of your immunity to crisis. Inclusiveness, leaderships, be close to your staff. So leadership needs to change, right? We need to be more agile, more close to our teams than before. And we need to actually establish a platform for that closeness in leadership. When it comes to problem solving, the Finnish tax administration is a brilliant example for that. If you would like to be more immune to crisis than the others, you need to prevent problems rather than resolve problems. So especially in times of massive digitalization, which is here and will be there even more, preventing problems is very, very important element because you may not have time for solving them. When it comes to the softer part of team engagement or managing team engagement and team motivation, we spoke a lot about empathy. Empathy greatly influences motivation. So if you provide empathy, you get back. You will see a motivated team. Smart communication. Again, we elaborated on that a lot. Maybe it's a good quote here. Too much communication means no communication. We, especially in digital times, we need to be efficient in terms of communication because, once we do not see each other physically, we tend to communicate a lot, long emails, a lot of video calls, as I already mentioned. So efficiency of communication is important for delivering the objectives you have in your organization at the end. And above all, trust, is building trust with your taxpayers is very important. And it is very important to build trust within your organization. It's a key element of overall success, and we went through the components of trust or components which help us build trust. To finish my presentation, actually, I utilize a graphical expression of a quote from Peter Drucker, who said, and I'm sure you heard that quote before, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Now, it obviously does not mean that strategy is not important. It means that if you might have a brilliant strategy, but if you do not succeed to develop a culture which supports that strategy, then the culture will eat that strategy for breakfast. So the culture and of change or developing mindset which helps adopt to change faster is essential and key today, and then also beyond the crisis, for preventing that the culture will eat our strategy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Frantisek. Exceptional presentation and very thoughtful, I have to say. I would like, while participants are thinking what questions they want to ask you, please use the chat box for questions to Frantisek. I would like to start the discussion by asking you some kind of general questions, really. One is kind of provocative to some extent. So how much digitalization do you think we're going to see, or what how much digitalization is optimal in some sense? How much do you think services would be digitalized, okay, within, the public sector, within the tax administrations. I mean, there's a frenzy that we discussed, as you alluded to, for everything to kind of be digitalized, and sometimes we, possibly things that we should, they shouldn't be digitalized. Okay, so it seems to me that, tax administrations, and definitely, and I guess I cannot know the Finnish one that you spoke about, which is so advanced, okay, in the digitalized, okay, process. Now, I guess some tax administrations must be thinking that digitalization is everything. So the question to you is, do you think that's the case? I mean, is it everything? How far we're gonna go? That's number one. The second one is in the process that you very nicely described in terms of cultural change, which I guess, okay, for the Finnish tax administration, that's easy because they have been doing so many things in the past, but there are so many others, okay, that have been struggling with that. And one of the key components, one of the difficulties that they're facing, I guess, is low skills, okay, within the labor force. And this, that skill distribution is very difficult to adapt, okay, to the new needs. And I guess what I would like to ask you is, do you have any evidence, how far behind in terms of skills, these tax administrations are? How many years do you think it's going to take? How far behind? And so and I guess that's going to be part of the question. How do we change that? What's the process? How do we make the senior management who possibly haven't used sophisticated digitalized technologies get to use them now? You see, so that might be resistant to change. And the third one, I would like to ask about compliance. So do you have any evidence that throughout the pandemic there is because from going from not digitalized to digitalized, there's a dip in compliance. So the economy is reacting either because there's an income effect. Okay, there's people get unemployed, or businesses go bust, and tax authorities cannot react quickly simply because the face-to-face auditing is not quite there. They can't digitalize. I mean, do you see a drop in compliance? These are my three questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Christos. If I will not remember all the elements, then please help me, but I try. So let me start with your third question, whether I see digitalization as the cure for everything, right? First of all, I'm honestly convinced that tax administrations need. I mean, it's not I'm convinced. I mean, it's by definition need to serve all the taxpayer segments, and even in the most advanced countries, you will have taxpayer segments which will not use the digital solutions, right? So it's not a it's a tool, right? It's not a solution, but it's a great tool for a what's happening? I start to break apart. It's a great tool for a large percentage of taxpayers actually in Europe, where I believe globally too. So I think what is valid here, the easier you make it for taxpayers, the easier you get the voluntary compliance. And at the end, I think that's the goal here, because forced compliance is expensive. I mean, all these analytical tools which you need to use to be good in forced compliance, and actually not to border segments who do not deserve to be bordered, you need to know. And these analytical tools are obviously expensive. It takes some time until you implement them, and then you need to allocate significant resources for forced compliance. So I'm honestly convinced that easiness of taxpayer services, or ease of use of taxpayer services, significantly contributes to compliance. And ease of use you reach through digitalization. I see no other tool how you can make it easier for taxpayers. And obviously digitalization helps you to pre-fill tax returns for taxpayers, as we heard it from the Finnish examples. And if you have the other elements of your information systems working well, then the pre-filling is also not a significant problem. So make it easy for your taxpayers; it will pay off. And therefore, I'm a great believer in digitalization. But on the other hand, I think we need to take in consideration that not all taxpayer segments will use these digital tools, and for them we need to make it easy physically or via call centers or any other tools. But I still believe that the COVID-19 pandemic taught tax administrations who are less digitalized than the Nordic countries in general. It's not only the Finnish tax administration. They will speed up, and they already sped up, and actually it taught them how important it is to reach this digital immunity. So I believe we will see a faster digitalization over the next couple of years than before. So this was the first question. And I think you need to help me with the others.
But the other was about the skills, okay, within the labor force, skills, okay, within the existing administration.
That's obviously a big challenge. We saw from the Finnish tax administration, so from the information we got from the Finnish tax administration, that they offer e-services for 20 years. For more than 20 years. So they had enough time to build the skills of personnel to get ready for delivering digital services in a very large extent. So if you did not do it before as a tax administration, or if you did it slowly, or if you did it to a small extent, then as you need to speed up digitalization, you need to speed up the process of skills reform, so to say, which is very, very difficult, right? I mean, because it's much easier to speed up digitalization than speed up skills reform. So it's a challenge which is obviously manageable, through proper team management. You always have some champions of change within the organization, and train the trainer concepts, and sorry for this, train the trainer concepts, and I think the earlier tax administrations will start to work on skills reform, the better for them, because this will be inevitable for the digital transformation. And the third one, compliance. Compliance, yeah. Now it is a very interesting. Do you hear me? It's breaking. It's a very interesting question during the crisis, during times of crisis, and during COVID-19 pandemic crisis, obviously too. And the reason is that naturally businesses need help and support during these times. I mean, they were affected heavily. So forced compliance does not seem to be the right solution to increase compliance during the times of crisis. It's rather cooperative compliance. But on the other hand, not everybody deserves cooperative compliance, because the crisis itself, I mean, did not change the profile in your taxpayers, the profile of your taxpayer segment. So fraudsters, most likely state fraudsters during the time of pandemic, and he comes against again IT and digitalization. You need to have good analytical solutions to be able to distinguish between taxpayer segments, and fraudsters maybe need even more heavy forced tax compliance measures, so more heavy audits, more frequent audits than before, and all the others need more support. So cooperative compliance is a tool, of course, for that. and so I believe it was influenced heavily, and it has decreased, unfortunately, because you know, if your business is impacted heavily, then obviously your tax compliance might be impacted too. Not because you do not want to be compliant, just simply because you have cash flow issues and other issues in your business. So I think here the dialogue is very important. Actually, we in IOTA now we are preparing together with IBFDS, our partner, in March an event, a digital event on tax compliance of tourism industry, which is obviously an interesting topic because tourism industry was hit significantly, as we know, and I believe it will be a very interesting event to hear the view of the industry and to hear the view of tax administrations with regard to tax compliance in this industry. So I think dialogue is very important here. So this is an example of a dialogue.
Thank you. This is indeed the kind of discussion we had yesterday, during Jim Malm's plenary session, where he talked about the need for trust, having trust in society, between the public sector and people and the government in general. That was very enlightening as well. I see a question through the chat box. Can you see it, Franz?
Yeah, I'm just opening it now because I had no time for that, but yes, I can see it.
Thank you. I can read it out if you.
I see a question from Christian Agung.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for such a great presentation. Thank you, Christian. One quick question. With the high cost required for a comprehensive digitalization process, do you have any examples of efforts and actually tackle this problem, particularly for developing countries? Well, I think two elements are important. So element number one, do not reinvent the wheel. So I mean, there are many great examples in advanced tax administrations, how they solve the problem when it comes to implementation of information systems or digital processes. So I think IOTA or any other regional tax organization, I don't know from what region you are, might be very helpful in providing you the right guidance to the country which has solved the problem you are trying to solve recently in an efficient and fast way. So benchmarks and not reinventing the wheel. And I do not want to promote commercial off-the-shelf solutions here, but it's good to evaluate the utilization of those because it really saves time and effort as they are pre-customized for the concrete tax administration process. But I would start with the first one. So benchmarks from your peers, which might have gone through the similar task recently, could save you a lot of time and effort how to solve that.
Thank you. Any more questions? No, please use the chat box. Can I ask you, Frantisek, do you have any sense of how difficult tax administrations have been finding to manage the change? Is there any measure? Have you done any qualitative work just to tease out to see how far behind the necessary changes have been?
It's a very good point. So we didn't in IOTA do a qualitative research on that. Of course, one of the reasons was that we've been trying to share best practice for our members in the areas which help them to overcome the crisis, right? So we didn't want to kind of border them or take their capacity for a qualitative research in something they are still fighting with and doing it. So what I saw is that And actually they did it very clever. So they tried to accustom to the level of digitalization of services and processes they have. So, there are tax administrations who are, who are advanced in their digital transformation, and for them it was easy. We had this example. There are others who are less advanced in digitalization, and what I saw is that they had, for example, a higher percentage of office work, with all the preventive measures, but they didn't have 85% of people working from home. So they kept them in the office, obviously, cautiously with taking all the COVID-19 measures in consideration, which helped them actually to overcome the crisis, because they were kind of in line with how they've been doing it before. But this is when it comes to operation model within the tax administration and managing people and teams within the tax administration. When it comes to tax compliance and tax revenue collection, here I have to say, it's not possible to get accustomed to your digitalization level. Here, it is 100% valid. The more digitalized you are, the more efficient you are in tax revenue collection. So here, the more digital are more successful, I think.
Thank you. We have two questions in the chat box, one from David and the other from Sean. Can you?
Yeah, let me try to. I see from Sean, so let me go to that. Digitalization as is for taxpayers presumably only works with good design. Make it easy. It's so true. How can tax authorities ensure good design of taxpayer-facing software? I'm not sure I understand entirely what is a taxpayer-facing software. So you mean a taxpayer interface, probably. So how it appears for the taxpayer.
I think so. Yes, I think that's okay. The idea, because there have been some some research that shows how you design. Okay, it matters a lot. Okay, for compliance. And I guess this is what he alludes to.
Yeah, I think there's a good rule for that, saying always start with incredible. I'm on the office Wi-Fi, so I do not know why it is like that. So it's a good rule. Always start with the end in mind. So here it's always good to start at the end of the process. So it is your customer, it is your taxpayer. So if you design the interface and the interaction with the taxpayer, and then you go back to your processes within your organization. In other words, you do not start to implement the system from inside to outside, but from outside to inside. That can help a lot. All right, and I think good solutions are designed like that. And as I said in my previous answer, there are many good examples in IOTA tax administrations, how they did it, with benchmarks from your peers. If you are a tax administration, of course, you can save a lot of time, a lot of effort. But to start the process from the customer and implement it backwards to your organization is a good approach, I believe.
Thank you. And there's another one before that, okay, from
David. I see it now, Christos. What is your view on the OECD vision of tax administration 3.0, which emphasizes moving tax processes into taxpayers' business systems, e.g. part of their banking or payments? How will that change the resilience of tax authorities to crisis? It has a lot to do with cooperative compliance. So what you are referring to is a very advanced level of cooperative compliance that basically you share data and not only data, but also, as you say, you share in a managed way access to IT systems between businesses and the tax administration. Now, first of all, segmentation of taxpayers is key here. I mean, you need to be pretty sure with whom you will go into this level of cooperative compliance. But in general, I view that very positive. So if you have a good, good segmentation of your taxpayers, and if you have a good compliance rating of your taxpayers, and you know with whom you can go into this advanced level of cooperative compliance, then I believe it's a very good concept, which will first of all make it easy for both for the businesses and the tax administrations, and definitely increase tax compliance. So you become a partner. You know, so it's a partnership concept basically.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I'm conscious of the time. And on that note, I would like to thank you very much for joining us. I hope you can come back and update us on the long journey, okay, for cultural change soon. Thank you very much for joining us, Frantisek.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Have a great rest of the conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you.